Today I'm going to talk about adrenal disease. So first of all, what are the adrenal glands? Well, in our bodies there are two adrenal glands and they lie above the kidneys on the superior pole. The adrenal glands can be divided into two main components, the cortex, which is the outer part, and the medulla, which is the inner part. And these two areas are very different. We have the outer cortex, which is controlled by the pituitary gland, and the medulla, which is basically a modified part of the autonomic nervous system. And it is this medulla which secretes adrenaline and noradrenaline. But a lot of the diseases, in particular the diseases which I will be talking about in this video, are related to the adrenal cortex, and it makes up 90% of the adrenal gland and has three different layers. So first of all, it has the zona glomerulosa, which has mineralocorticoids. Then we have the zona fasciculata, which secretes glucocorticoids, and the zona reticularis, which has the androgens. And this is often referred to as salt sugar sacs to remember what the adrenal cortex produces. The adrenal medulla, on the other hand, has two cell types. It has the adrenaline secreting cells, making up the vast majority, 80% of the adrenal medulla, and it has the noradrenaline secreting cells, which make up 20%. And what I'm sure you're most concerned about is the diseases of the adrenal gland, and they are basically to deal with excess or deficiencies of the various products produced by the adrenal cortex. So first of all, we can have hyperaldosteronism, and this refers to the zona glomerulosa, the salt component of the salt sugar sacs. And aldosterone is a mineralocorticoid, and it is released if there is low blood volume, and this causes angiotensin II to be produced, which causes aldosterone release. And aldosterone is also released in response to high potassium. Basically, there are three main stimulators of aldosterone release. That is angiotensin II, high levels of vitamin K, and to a small degree ACTH. But the main things that cause aldosterone to be released are angiotensin II and high levels of potassium. And the purpose of aldosterone is it works on the kidneys, mainly the distal convoluted tubule and the collecting duct, and it causes reabsorption of sodium in exchange for potassium and hydrogen ions. So if someone has hyperaldosteronism, it's basically what it says on the tin. Their body's producing too much aldosterone, and of course aldosterone is a mineralocorticoid produced by the zona glomerulosa of the adrenal cortex. And how would we know they had it? Well, if your body is absorbing sodium and absorbing the water, sodium and water retention, that's going to give you high blood pressure. If your body's getting rid of potassium, it's going to give you hypokalemia. If your body's getting rid of hydrogen ions, it's going to give you a metabolic alkalosis. And as well as that, you're going to get general symptoms of this disorder, such as polyuria, polydipsia, and going to the toilet more, increased thirst, and muscle weakness. And how would we diagnose hyperaldosteronism? Well, you'd look at the electrolytes, check if the potassium is low, you'd check the aldosterone, it would be raised of course, and the renin. And normally, if the aldosterone is high, as in this case, the renin is going to be low. So if there's renin is produced normally if there's low blood volume, but in this scenario we're going to have high blood volume due to the water and the sodium retention. So we would expect the renal to be low, or the renin to be low, in hyperaldosteronism. So also you can have secondary hyperaldosteronism, and this is more to do with the renin-angiotensin system, not like the primary hyperaldosteronism. So secondary would be caused by things not to do with the adrenal gland, like excess diuretic hormone or congestive heart failure. Now lastly, I'm going to talk about Cushing's disease, or Cushing's and Cushing syndrome. Cushing syndrome refers to excess cortisol, and it includes a variety of causes that can cause increased cortisol. Now cortisol is essentially the sugar part of the salt, sugar, sex, memory aid. And the interesting thing about cortisol is that it varies during the day, and you get the highest levels of cortisol in the morning, and then it falls throughout the day. And it's because of this that it makes it a bit tricky to test for. I mean, if you hear Cushing syndrome is due to high cortisol, you would think, oh, I'll just test the cortisol, but it's because of this variety, the variation during the day, that you can't really do that. So there are two main tests to help combat this problem. You can have the overnight dexamethasone suppression test, and this is when you give someone a steroid like cortisol, and once they're given that, your body should suppress cortisol production, because you're already getting a lot of cortisol from this dexamethasone. So through negative feedback on the adrenal glands, you would expect less cortisol to be produced, and this would be the case in a normal, healthy individual. But in someone who has Cushing syndrome, the cortisol levels will still be high even after overnight dexamethasone. And what you do is you give this dexamethasone at 11, and cortisol levels are measured, and then at 8 you measure the cortisol levels, and you'll see that they're high even at 8 in someone who has Cushing syndrome. You could also do a 24-hour urinary cortisol level, and this gives us a whole value over 24 hours. Now this is a bit messier, but it combats that problem that cortisol levels vary throughout the day. And another investigation you can do after these initial investigations is the higher dose of dexamethasone. Give a patient 8 milligrams, and this helps tell us if the cause of Cushing syndrome is coming from the pituitary. And normally if it's coming from the pituitary, that higher dose of dexamethasone will kick in. There'll be negative feedback, and the body will say, hey, we're getting enough dexamethasone, we don't need to produce all that cortisol. So they'll get a closer to normal result from the high dose dexamethasone test if it's a pituitary source. Any other source of Cushing syndrome will not give a response to the high dose dexamethasone test. So the cortisol will still be high, it won't be suppressed. What are the causes of Cushing syndrome? Well, there's many different causes. You can get the pituitary adenoma, and this is Cushing's disease. If Cushing syndrome is caused by a pituitary adenoma, that's Cushing's disease. You can get an adrenal adenoma, and you can get atopic ACTH production, and that's by things like lung cancer, which is producing ACTH, and other malignancies. So what is the difference between Cushing syndrome and Cushing disease? In Cushing syndrome, it can be caused by anything basically, like I've talked about. atopic causes adrenal adenoma, whereas Cushing disease is solely due to pituitary adenoma. And basically, a question you will get asked a lot, I know I got asked this a lot at med school, is what are the symptoms of Cushing's disease? So these can be divided into different systems. Reproductively, men will have erectile dysfunction, females absent periods. Muscular system, there'll be muscular weakness. Bones, there'll be increased fractures. Skin, there'll be striae and acne. Vascular system, increased blood pressure, glucose intolerance. And psychologically, there'll be low mood, low libido. And then, of course, you have the general symptoms that get frequently mentioned: the suprascapular fat pad, truncal obesity, and easy bruising. And what is the treatment of Cushing syndrome? Well, if it's due to Cushing's disease, you want to surgically remove the pituitary adenoma, and that's done by transsphenoid resection. If due to adrenal adenoma, you will get surgical adrenalectomy, so remove the adrenal glands. And sometimes you can give a medication, but of course surgery is preferred over this medication. Now that concludes this video. There is a second part of this adrenal disease talk, which I will be uploading shortly. But thank you very much for listening, and if you like this, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to view more medical education videos.